social media feeds. Let's get the conversation going. And of course, you can share your love, which we always love here on Teachers Talk Radio, by giving us a little bit of a like. And you can do that via the Podbean Live app as well. But while you're thinking of all of those things that you wish you knew before you start university, here is today's news for you.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and this is Teachers Talk Radio News with Megan Goods.
This is your latest Teachers Talk Radio News. Congratulations are in order for sixth form students across the UK who received their A-level or Highers results yesterday following a second challenging and interrupted academic year. A record 395,770 students have been accepted onto their first choice of full-time course in the UK, which is up 8% from last year. Almost 45% of the grades awarded were an A or A star, compared to a third of results back in 2019. A parallel increase has been noted across the top grades for the Scottish Higher National Qualification in the UK, which the data coming in from yesterday's results does, however, show a continuance in the widening gap between demographics who achieve highly in their exams and those who do not. For example, students studying in London are more likely to achieve higher grades than their northern counterparts, with 47.9% of results being an A or A star in London compared to 39.2% in the northeast. Ofqual's findings also highlighted an increasing percentage gap for historically disadvantaged groups. Black students, students on free school meals, and students from levels of deprivation cited as very high, all received lower grades on average than their peers. The gender gap has continued to grow, with female students now outperforming males in maths, and the gap between male and female students for English language tripling over the last 2 years. Finally, the gap between private and state schools has widened. 70% of grades awarded by private schools were top marks, compared with 39.3% of those at secondary comprehensive schools. Lee Elliott Major, Professor of Social Mobility at the University of Exeter, as quoted in The Guardian, said, "It is deeply concerning to see widening socio-economic divides in this year's A-level results, confirming our worst fears. The pandemic has exacerbated educational inequalities outside and inside the school gates. The government urgently needs to set out its plans for a return to a national exam system from next year that is fair to all pupils, irrespective of what school they attend or home that they come from." That was your latest Teachers Talk Radio News.
Good morning and welcome to your Wednesday morning breakfast show with me, James Clark. Oh, it is always good to be back to the Wednesday morning slot. If you've just joined us, good morning. We are talking all about the pieces of advice or tips that we wish we'd known before we started secondary school. No, before we started university or secondary school, or to be fair, anything. Let's make it broad. And as you can tell, James Clark is still waking up today. So what are those pieces of advice that you wish you'd known before you started at university? And wherever you are joining us, thank you for joining us. I know we've got people joining us on the Twitter live feed and also on the Facebook live feed. So hello if you are joining us on Twitter and Facebook as well. If you want to get your voice heard though, please drop onto the Podbean Live app and you can send comments in that way, or indeed of course you can do it via the Twitter as well. Okay, so pieces of advice we wish we knew before we went to university. We've already had a little bit of a conversation, and I've got a few more to go through for the rest of today's show. But I'm just going to read a comment out from at Lesson Copy, who has put on the chat there that we had a dishwasher, and none of us had used one before, and we were too ashamed to ask when the landlord said it needed salt. And do you know what? I have never in my life, and again, I'm making lots of claims here on Teachers Talk Radio today that I'm sure will be held against me in the future, but still, at age 25, I've never used in my life dishwasher salt. I could not tell you what dishwasher salt even does. I think it cleans the system or does something to do it. I have no idea. But I've never used. But then also I've moved around. I think the longest I stayed. To be fair, I've stayed for like 4 years. But yeah, I've never used dishwasher salt in my life. And the same, I think you can get similar things. I might be wrong, but again, I think you can get similar things for that was a dishwasher, for a washing machine. I think for a washing machine, you can get similar things as well that you're meant to put in there that help to kind of clean it out or do something. And again, never used them in my life. Probably feel like I should have. I don't know if I'm doing something wrong, but these are general like household. I think life. It's weird because when we talk about life skills, we think a little bit sometimes a little bit more deeper in terms of building relationships and friendships and consent and really important topics like that. But actually, the practical life skills are probably just as important. In the same way, one thing I wish I'd known before I started university was how to sew a button on, because I can't sew a button. I don't know how. I think it's quite easy. Bear in mind, this is coming from a kid who I went to Cross Stitch Club, which was a club. There was like 4 of us in it at primary school. I think it was middle school. I was in year 4 or 5, and I did go to Cross Stitch Club, and I remember cross stitching a little Santa at one of the Christmas events. But yes, that aside, so I get distracted by comments coming in. That aside, I don't know how to sew a button on, and there were so many times when I was at university or when I was at, adult life now, but even when I was at university, where something would happen and a button would come off and I wouldn't actually know how to replace it. So I would probably end up not wearing that shirt again. I've actually got shirts currently in my wardrobe that I know for a fact have buttons missing from them, but I don't know how to sew a button on. So that is something that I wish I'd known before I started university as well. There are loads coming through from one of our hosts here, Sonia, who've got a few, and so I'll break some of these down. Number 1, being more confident and assertive with lecturers who weren't as helpful as they could have been. So this is something that she wished she'd known. Is actually, I think when we go into those, I found this not being someone who's that academic. Dyslexia, so I struggled a lot when there was a lot of, I still do, but when there's a lot of writing or words or complex language. I don't understand why, as the world of academia that we are, or the world or academic, feel the need to use overcomplicated language all the time for everything. I don't understand why we can't just say what something means in a term or in a way that everybody will understand. We always sometimes feel the need to isolate. And I know that sometimes I would sit in lectures or sit, in meetings when I first started out in my career and when I first started in university, and people would say things and I would have literally no idea what that word even means, yet alone what the context of the conversation's even about. And quite often I would just sit there and I wouldn't do anything. I wouldn't say anything. I would just let the conversation happen. And I think that is so true, that, it is about building confidence. It's about building resilience in our young people. And it's about saying to them, at a younger age, if you don't understand something, and we do this a little bit, or if you think something is wrong, then you need to speak up and challenge it. Not be rude or abrupt in it, but just say, actually, well, what do we mean by this? And constantly challenge. And we do this a lot, I think, at primary. We're constantly, and secondary, we're constantly, getting our young people, our students to challenge, to think outside the box. And, what's this mean? What's that mean? But perhaps we don't do it enough because we don't always feel confident to put our hand up and say, I don't understand what's happening. And then actually, that's the skill we need. Another one Sonia said here about in response to the question of something you wish you knew before you started university was choosing the right course as opposed to university prestige. Now, I do agree with this one. I know for a fact that it's all about these Russell Group universities. Now, I can't comment because I went to drama school, Royal Central School of Speech and Drama, and part of the reason I did go to that university or drama school was because it was one of the best for drama, and it was wasn't a university, it was a drama school, and it was very prestigious, and it had this person come from it, this person come from it. So I did fall a little bit into that trap. I loved my course and I enjoyed what I did, but I do think sometimes we don't actually. Maybe some people do, but I'm going to make a broad statement here. Feel free to disagree with me. I don't think we support students going onto the right course. We support them going into what we believe are the right universities. So because something is a Russell Group university, I'm picking one name out of the hat, Queen Mary's, I believe, or UCL. I'm going to say, apologies if they're not, but I believe they are. We will say to students, oh, you need to go to this university, or how are we going to get you into this university? And actually, yes, all universities do similar courses, but the course that they offer might not be the right one for them. An example of that is if I think about teaching. So I did my PGCE, postgraduate certificate in education. I think that's right. Might be wrong. And I did it at the University of East London, and I did it in secondary drama because I knew I wanted to do drama teaching, and I didn't want to do it as a secondary subject. So I didn't want to have to retrain and do English and drama, or you can do history and drama. I mean, there are loads of additional subjects you can do alongside it, but I knew that my passion was in doing drama, and that's what I wanted to do, not with something else. And so when I went to take that offer, and I was like, that's for me. I knew lots of other people who were going to other universities such as UCL, Institute of Education, and those sort of places because they knew it was a, in quotation marks, a better university or a better course or more renowned for this and that and this and that and whatever it might be. They weren't going because it was the right course for them. They were going because of the name of the university. And I think that's so wrong. I think that's not benefiting or helping our students in any way if we are simply saying, right, go here because this has got a good name and a good reputation. Of course, we want to push students to aspire to go to the top universities, and we know that's what employers might look like. But actually, are we spending that time helping students to find the right course that's good for them? I mean, there's a course that's happening where our students has got into, and they got into it through clearing, but it's absolutely perfect for them because it's about PE, which they love. They love physical education, so they love doing being practical, and it also blends in kind of like a primary education forte as well. So they kind of get to do the PE, but they also have a bit of focus around education and working with young people, and that is perfect for that young person. It's not a Russell Group university, but actually the course suits them really well, and I think that's a really great piece of advice there that Sonia put through. Another one is someone said that they wish they knew before starting university was how expensive it would be. Had to work part-time jobs along studying, which some of my peers didn't. Yeah, really, really true. I think we do rely a lot on student finance. And controversially, I think we're quite lucky that we have student finance. I mean, in other parts of the world, you've got to literally save every single penny and you get nothing. But, we do have student finance, which does support, but of course, that is based on your household income or joint household income, which I know, my parents, my first year were together, and, they had money, but they didn't have tons and tons and tons of money. So the student loan that I got was quite small to live in London. I know my mum and dad still had to fork out and support me, nearly £9,000, I think it was, just for my first year alone, just so I could live in London, not let alone do anything else, but just do that. And that's no matter what situation you're in, that's a huge amount of money. And so being able to support yourself is really, really important, and how you do that, but also how hard you have to work because you're studying at the same time you have to get a part job or those sort of things. Or what often happens, and this is why it's important that students are aware of this, is you don't apply for a job. You do 2-3 months at university or wherever you're going to, and then you realise, oh, this student loan, this money is not stretching as far as I thought it would. And you start to panic a little bit, and you think, oh, I'll go get a job. But if you're in a university town, you take somewhere like University of Manchester, you've got literally thousands of other students who are doing exactly the same. So those kind of typical student jobs no longer really exist because people got in there 3 months before you. So it is really important that you start thinking about your finances, not as I did, and start using an overdraft. Would not recommend. I mean, an overdraft is great, don't get me wrong, but just make sure you really understand what it is and you're able to manage it, because it can very quickly get a little bit out of hand, and you get a little bit excited when you realise that you've got, again in commas, extra money that you didn't have before. And it was always sad. Sad story time. I was always sad when I started my getting into my overdraft, and then I got my first paycheck, and then I was only just out of the overdraft. So I was like, oh no, that's a sad thing. But there we go. Another thing that Sonia said here about something they wish they knew before they'd start university was to join lots of clubs. Really love that one, and I think that's super, super true. To join lots of clubs, and I would strongly urge and encourage anybody who's about to go into university, where they do have, I mean, most universities do have some form of student union, but where there are socials or anything to get involved in, just go and do it. Take full advantage of that. Go and meet amazing people, go and do amazing things, go and, try things you've never done before, new sports, whatever it might be. Go and do it, because this is an absolute time and place for you to be able to do that. So really, really encourage that. And also you get to meet some amazing people. So you're meeting brand new people, which is also super exciting. But what about you? What are some of the things that you wish you had known before you had started university? What are those things that you'd go, oh, if I was to turn back in time, or if I was to turn to my students today, what would you say to them? What would you say? Right, you need to know this before you go to university. You need to know this. This is something they didn't teach you. What would you suggest? Get involved, tune in, talk it out. Let me know via the Podbean Live app, or of course on Twitter at TT Radio 2021. We want to hear your views. We want to hear your thoughts. This is your radio show after all here on the Wednesday morning breakfast show. We'll be right back very, very soon after a short word from our sponsors.
Creative Resources, made for teachers by teachers. At Creative Resources, we've been rethinking what a classroom can be. We've created a huge range of more than 2,500 original and exciting resources that span across more than 15 different subject areas. Whether you're looking for primary or secondary level resources, careers options, PSHE, arts or humanities, Creative Resources have the resources for you. We offer full curriculum packages and unique, challenging escape rooms themed on topics such as Shakespeare, Tudors, and fractions. We have quizzes, task cards, Tarsia puzzles, and lots more. Better still, more than 100 resources can be accessed for free. Just visit our website, www.cre8tiveresources.com. You can get 10% off any order you make on our website by using the discount code TT Radio. Creative Resources, made for teachers by teachers. Every teacher loves stationery, right? Imagine getting a selection of fun, beautiful and unique stationery items designed and selected especially for teachers, delivered through your door every month. You need to check out teacherslovestationery.club.
I'm always so excited when the box arrives. It's such a treat.
My Teachers Love Stationery Club box is just a little treat to myself every month.
It's always full of delightful and surprising items, including some really good quality stationery brands like Faber-Castell and Stabilo.
And because you never know what you're going to get, it makes it even more fun and special when you get it.
It feels really great to be supporting a family business that's run by real teachers. I can't help feeling like they just know what I'm going to enjoy using stationery-wise better than I do myself.
Visit teacherslovestationery.club and enter the code TT Radio when you buy your first stationery box to save £2 today. Teachers Love Stationery .club. Introducing the Leadership Masterclass series by Diana Osagi. Learn how to ditch your fears and develop your leadership confidence. How to deal with difficult colleagues. How to thrive when you lead in a challenging environment. And how to get colleagues to buy into your vision. Join Diana for her online leadership masterclasses starting on the 10th of July and running all the way through the summer. These sessions are the perfect way to prepare and refresh for the next academic year and beyond. Book your place at courageousleadership.co.uk/events now. The first 50 leaders to sign up get an additional free mini coaching session with Diana herself. Don't miss this. Courageous Leadership Masterclasses at courageousleadership.co.uk/events.
Good morning and welcome back to your Wednesday morning breakfast show with me, James Clark, here on Teachers Talk Radio. We're excited to be here today talking all about the things we wish we had known before we started university. We've already had loads of great comments coming through, ranging from wishing we'd known how to work a dishwasher, which is a conversation we were having earlier, to learning how to manage your student finance and the joys of getting into the overdraft. But what do you think? What is something you wish you had known before you'd started university or before going on to out of school? You know, wherever you'd gone on to, whether it was university, apprenticeships, a job, or wherever it is you went on to next. What is something you wish you had known that you didn't before? That's what we're talking all about today. And we've already had a number of you getting involved either via Twitter or on the Podbean Live app, which has been absolutely fantastic. And if you are just joining our show halfway through, welcome. Where have you been? Of course, only joking. Great to have you here. Thank you for joining us, whether you're joining us on live on Podbean app or you are joining us via Facebook or on Twitter on the live feeds that feature there as well. Wherever you're joining us from, I hope you are enjoying the lovely weather and morning just as much as I am. If we would love to hear your views and your thoughts on this. So something that I wish I'd known before I'd started university or before I left was pretty much how expensive shopping was and food shopping. One of the best tips and advice I would ever give to anybody, wherever you go to, whatever location you end up in, is learning when the reduced aisle starts in your local shop. That was the best tip that I ever got, and it's one that I still use today. Wherever you move, wherever you go to. My first year, I lived in Stratford in East London, and I was in a new student accommodation build that was there, and it was right next to a big sort of shopping centre called Westfields in Stratford, and just next door to where my student accommodation was the Westfields, and inside there, just where we were, was a Waitrose. So that was my closest shop as a student. My first year of university was a Waitrose. Now, for those who are listening who don't know what Waitrose is, or internationally who don't have a Waitrose where they are, Waitrose is kind of a little bit of a higher class market shop. I mean, it's still a supermarket at the end of the day, but it's a little bit more expensive than some of the other shops that are out there and around there. So we went to Waitrose, and I learned very quickly that if I went to Waitrose at about, I think 4:30, 5 o'clock, that's when you could get the best reduced things. And honestly, I got some crackers, not literally crackers, but I did get some absolutely cracking bargains there. And you pick things up and they're literally like, was £4 down to 99p or whatever it is. It does mean though that you get very quickly good at being a little bit adventurous with ingredients, and very quickly learning to make things that you probably wouldn't have ever made or eaten before. But nevertheless, they do taste quite good. I remember I also had Yorkshire puddings, I think, that were down to like 40p. Needless to say, they did sit in the freezer for a very, very long time. But there we go. They got eaten eventually. It was nice when we got there. But those are the sort of things, those are sort of, little tips and tricks that you don't always think of, or you think actually it might sound silly, but generally that's something to be aware of. Look at where your local shops are, your local amenities, knowing your area, exploring that. That's that first time before you start university or before lectures start, you're actually really into flow of things and things are busy. Is take the time to explore the space you're in. And that's something I try to do a little bit more now, even as an adult, going, moving around or moving to different flats or houses or whatever it might be. It's actually knowing what's around you. And I think we've learned that a lot with lockdown, and fully taking advantage of what there is around us and exploring that. Because my first year, as I said, I lived in Stratford, and I was also right next door to the Olympic Village, right next door to the Olympic Stadium. And I probably visited that place maybe 2 times in the year that I was there. Once or twice in the year that I was there, I only bothered to go there once or twice and walk around. And actually, it's an amazing space. And I wish that I'd been a little bit more outgoing and creative, and thought, actually, let's see if I can. They were doing shows in there at the time, and before it got brought out by the football stadium, there were things happening, and I should have taken more advantage of that. And when at university, whenever you go to university, if you do, or whenever you move to a new area, is take advantage of what is in that area. Living in London, I probably don't take advantage of what London has to offer, or being a local in London, as much as I probably should. Taking things like going for theatre tickets. I can, if I wanted to, go to stand out, less so now, post-COVID, but used to be able to go to theatres and queue up in the morning, 9, 10 o'clock, and get the first cheap tickets of the day. And every theatre had like £20 tickets or whatever a day. And I never did that. I still have never done that. And, there are people that travel into London at like 6 in the morning or whatever and go get these tickets. And I've never done that, and I live in London. So really taking advantage of what is around you is a piece of advice that I would say to somebody when they start university or when they move to a new area or whatever it might be, is really spend some time getting to know that area. Spend some time thinking, actually, I'm just going to explore. Don't have a set agenda, but just go and explore. So we've talked a lot today about different things we recommend in terms of what you might say to somebody as tips or advice before they start university. And they've ranged from being both the very practical household things we should know, to the financy, to actually general things such as exploring the space. And one of the other things that I wish I'd known before I started university, and again, this is something that, as teachers and as educators, we do, and we try to install. So I don't think it's not because of lack of trying that this doesn't happen. I think it's more as teenagers and as people, we don't perhaps pay attention to this enough, but actually, learning how to study and being, even now, I really struggle to sometimes make myself sit down and do something, but learning how to study, learning how to, take time out and think, actually, this is what we're going to do, and I'm going to make this time, and I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that. I think we don't actually spend time thinking about how we're going to ensure that we study well and hard, and how to practically study. And I wish that it's something that someone had told me more of before I started university, because I think by the time you get to, time I got to my 3rd year and I was having to write my dissertation, that was a nightmare. And in hindsight, the dissertation, it wasn't that difficult to do. It's a lot of words, don't get me wrong, but because I hadn't taken on board the advice or had enough support in terms of actually how to revise effectively, I found that whole process a lot more difficult than it perhaps should have been or could have been. So that would also be something that I would wish I knew more advice of before I started university, was actually thinking about, okay, what do I need to know? how do I do it? How do I do it effectively? And what works for me? Because we teach lots of techniques. Don't get me wrong, gosh, we must teach hundreds upon hundreds of techniques, but how many of them are actually useful to us? And learning that and exploring that and being a little bit more playful with that, I think is really important. So that's what we've been talking about. It's all about those things we wish we knew before we started university. If you have any ideas or any thoughts, feel free to let me know via the Podbean Live app, or tune in, talk it out, tell us, what do you think? What are those things you wish you'd known before you had gone to university or started your next steps after the life of education, when you moved on from college or year 11 or whatever form of education you had to carry on till? Where is it next for you? And we'll carry on this conversation very soon after another short advert from our sponsors.
Every teacher loves stationery, right? Imagine getting a selection of fun, beautiful and unique stationery items designed and selected especially for teachers, delivered through your door every month. You need to check out teacherslovestationery.club.
I'm always so excited when the box arrives. It's such a treat.
My Teachers Love Stationery Club box is just a little treat to myself every month.
It's always full of delightful and surprising items, including some really good quality stationery brands like Faber-Castell and Stabilo.
And because you never know what you're going to get, it makes it even more fun and special when you get it.
It feels really great to be supporting a family business that's run by real teachers. I can't help feeling like they just know what I'm going to enjoy using stationery-wise better than I do myself.
Visit teacherslovestationery.club and enter the code TTRadio when you buy your first stationery box to save £2 today. teacherslovestationery.club.
Good morning and welcome back to the Wednesday morning breakfast show here on Teachers Talk Radio, and you are live with me, James Clark. This morning we are talking all about the wonderful things to do with advice and tips before starting university. What are the things you wish you had known? Or if you didn't go to university, what are the things you wish you'd known once you'd left school that you didn't think you knew well enough? We've already had a bit of a range of conversation today. We've talked a little bit about dishwashers, student finance, and exploring your local area. But we'd love to hear more from you, so please use the Podbean Live app chat to get involved. Type your thoughts below. Or indeed you can, of course, let us know via Twitter or Facebook. And welcome back. So that is the conversation today, things we wish we knew before we'd started university. And I'm just having a look now on Twitter and the social media to see what comments are coming through. If you're not following us on social media, the best place to find out everything you need to know is via the Teachers Talk Radio Twitter, which is at TT Radio 2021. Or indeed you can go to our website, which is ttradio.org, where you'll find all the other amazing information happening there. I should at this point mention as well that if you'd fancied having your own radio show, then you can come and join the TT Radio host team. You get a full tech introduction and a 2-show trial. So just direct message us via Twitter or indeed on our website if you're not on Twitter, if you wish to know more. There are spots, however you want to word it, across the week that you can join us, particularly during the morning break slots, which are usually 11 to 12 a.m. across the week. So we'd love to have as many of you as possible joining us. There's even slot to join the breakfast crew on Saturdays. It's the best place, it's the best crew to be a part of. Later on today as well, if you are wondering what else is up and coming in today's show, well, don't panic, there are lots of other shows happening today as well. So if you're interested in those, we've got the Drive Home show happening at 4 to 5:30 today with Harry, and we also have the Twilight show happening 6 to 7:30 with the wonderful Nathan, so make sure you are tuning in for those as well. You can, of course, make sure you are sharing today's show as well by the share function at the green button if you're on the Podbean Live app, or you can share it on Twitter and Facebook as well. And, of course, you can also send us your likes and love on the chat as well, but you can only do that via the Podbean Live app. So if you are on Podbean, you can click a little heart and send us some likes. It's always nice to get a bit of liking and loving in the morning on a Wednesday morning. But what do we wish we'd known then? What do we wish we had known before we had started university, or before we'd moved on generally to the next steps of our career or choices post-education? And I do genuinely think there's a lot to be learned about general household skills. I talked earlier about the dishwasher. I talked earlier about not really knowing how to sew a button on. Still don't to this day, but there we go. Knowing how to sew a button on. But all of those practical kind of house skills are things that, unless somebody teaches you at home, and then this, this opens up a whole other day of, is this an education thing to do, or should this be a homes thing to do? Is this family that should be teaching this, or is this the school that should be teaching some of these skills? And I think, to be fair, it's a little bit of both. I don't think the pressure should lie just on one party. I think it is quite general, and a bit of both of us that should be supporting in these practical skills. Because I do think they're important, even to go to basic things like ironing. I did learn how to iron because of my dad and having to do the trousers inside out and those sort of things. But even things like that, there are lots of those things that students generally don't know how to do and possibly won't learn. And you kind of go, they are basic household things. In the same way of setting up a bank account, how to register for a GP or a dentist, or, those sort of things. When I moved to London, I probably went about maybe, and I only did it this year, so that would have been, nearly, not far off 10 years maybe? Yeah, so maybe around 10 years or so, it took me to eventually register for a GP locally in the local area, because I didn't actually know why I needed to. Like, I knew, of course, if you got ill or anything like that, but if I was that ill, you'd go to, I grew up with my dad being a paramedic and mum being a nurse, so we had to be proper, almost dying to get any medical attention. And so I remember going to, often would go to, A&E if it was that bad, or you just go to the pharmacy, or you'd ring up, 111 or whatever, and, they would sort me out. But I didn't actually realise until I needed to get some medication that I actually needed to be registered, ideally, to a local GP, as opposed to one that was literally, quite a few miles down the road back in Worthing, West Sussex, a long distance away from where London is. And so even things like that, learning how to register for a GP was so important, because, we didn't learn those things. I think now things are changing. Now that, the sex relationship education policies are different in the UK, and there are certain topics and themes that we have to teach young people and they have to be aware of and everything like that. So, that has made significant difference, I would say, in what young people will learn going forward. But that is something else that I wish I'd known as a piece of advice, is actually going, how do you do these things, these adult things? How do you open up a bank account? How do you get the right bank account? I didn't ever get this Help to Buy ISA because I didn't really understand what it was, and now obviously I think they don't exist as much anymore, but I didn't really know what it was at all. So I never got one. A credit card. I've never got a credit card. I don't really understand what they are, but I've got some friends who have got them, and they use them and they've gained points from them and other things and X and Y and Z, and I was like, I've never used them, and so I don't fully understand exactly the full process of how to get the right one, because there's different types. So a lot around financial education is really important as well. We've got a comment coming in live on the Podbean Live app, so thank you for contributing. GMBB Breen said, when you take a bunch of teenagers to remote parts of the world, you realise how few life skills they seem to have. But on the other hand, how many people do not know how to flush a loo that isn't plumbed in? Hashtag growing up in country. But I'll say that again, apologies. When you take a bunch of teenagers to remote parts of the world, you realise how few life skills they seem to have. But on the other hand, how many people do know how to flush a loo that isn't pumped in? Hashtag growing up in the country. Exactly. And it's, it's linking on to that. Let's say about the toilet pumping, but linking on to that one. Whenever, obviously, having city kids, whenever we take them vaguely to the country, and when I'm talking about the country, I'm literally talking where there's a field. They literally have, they have no idea how things work. They think it's very different. I took a bunch of scouts. I mean, bearing in mind you think scouts, would have a little bit more common sense, at least I'd hope, but the things we teach them. We went and took a trip down to Brighton. So we went from London to Brighton. The first thing one of them did was try to get on the bus and use their Oyster card, because they just assumed that everywhere in the world, or everywhere else in the country, used Oyster, because that's what they grew up doing, that's what they were used to. They had no idea that it was different and wouldn't work. They had a bit of a shock when the bus driver was like, that's not going to work. But all those things are so true, those basic life skills of teaching people outside of what they're so used to. It's, it's that analogy of, you're a small fish in a big pond, or you're a big fish in a small pond, or whatever the way you look at it. Because suddenly they're going to be taken out of that pond which they know so well and go into a new area which they have no idea. Teaching them what a tram is and how trams work, or the London Underground system if they are going to London. If you moving to London, I had no idea before I moved. I remember my freshers, first of freshers event, or one of the first freshers event that I've been to. And bearing in mind, a few people at these things, but not many. And it was a pre-London, it was a pre-university one. It was one of these big open London ones. And I went there, and I remember the first night, must have got out of the club at about 1 in the morning, 2 in the morning, and I was completely lost. I had no idea how I was going to get home. I knew I lost the people that I was with. I knew I had to get the bus, but I didn't at the time have the right apps or the right phone, or know the system, or know the location, or know how to travel around. I wasn't prepared for that. So luckily, I had this homeless man came and saw that I was getting upset and I felt lost in what I was doing, and sorted me out and got me on the right bus and showed me the right location and all of those things. Very thankful to that person. But those are things that I wish I'd known before I went to university. It's actually, if you're going to go to this area, spend some time learning how that area works, how the travel system works, how you're going to get from A and B. Where can you go if you do get lost, particularly if you're going to major cities or big cities. On the plus side with big cities and major cities, that you're probably going to always find some way to travel, whether it's, the tube, the metro, night buses, last trains, whatever it might be. I do think those are really important things to learn before you go to university, is actually what that area is like. And it goes back to what I said, learning that area. And I love this comment about GM being put on the pod being my back, hashtag growing up country. It's so true, because there is such a difference whether you grow up in the country or whether you grow up as a city kid or in a London city kid or whatever it might be. There is a huge difference. Or internationally, lots of students and people come abroad internationally as well. So knowing if you're going to another country, the laws of that country, or how things work, or if you're going to drive, which side to drive on, all the practicalities of it. So with that, we're just going to take a short break now with playing the news for you. If you missed that earlier in today's show, so just going to play the news. But while I do that, start thinking about what are those things that you wish you had known before you had started university. What are the information, what are the facts, what are the things you wish you'd known? We've had a great array already, ranging from household skills to finance skills to knowing your area, to all of those kind of things. So what do you think? What are the things you wish you had known before you started university? And don't forget, you can, of course, share today's show, and you can send your love as well. We always like to get the likes. It's always nice. There's a nice feeling in life, isn't it? With that, though, we're going to start with the news that was played earlier. Just if you missed it, here it is again.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and this is Teachers Talk Radio News with Megan Goods.
This is your latest Teachers Talk Radio News. Congratulations are in order for sixth form students across the UK who received their A-level or highers results yesterday following a second challenging and interrupted academic year. A record 395,770 students have been accepted onto their first choice of full-time course in the UK, which is up 8% from last year. Almost 45% of the grades awarded were an A or A star, compared to a third of results back in 2019. A parallel increase has been noted across the top grades for the Scottish Higher National Qualification. The data coming in from yesterday's results does, however, show a continuance in the widening gap between demographics who achieve highly in their exams and those who do not. For example, students studying in London are more likely to achieve higher grades than their northern counterparts, with 47.9% of results being an A or A star in London, compared to 39.2% in the northeast. Ofqual's findings also highlighted an increasing percentage gap for historically disadvantaged groups. Black students, students on free school meals, and students from levels of deprivation cited as very high all received lower grades on average than their peers. The gender gap has continued to grow, with female students now outperforming males in maths, and the gap between male and female students for English language tripling over the last 2 years. Finally, the gap between private and state schools has widened. 70% of grades awarded by private schools were top marks, compared with 39.3% of those at secondary comprehensive schools. Lee Elliott Major, Professor of Social Mobility at the University of Exeter, as quoted in The Guardian, said, "It is deeply concerning to see widening socio-economic divides in this year's A-level results, confirming our worst fears. The pandemic has exacerbated educational inequalities outside and inside the school gates. The government urgently needs to set out its plans for a return to a national exam system from next year that is fair to all pupils, irrespective of what school they attend or home that they come from." That was your latest Teachers Talk Radio News.
Good morning and welcome back to the Wednesday Morning Breakfast Show with me, Jade Clark. Oh, was that a bit of stretch then when I said that? Sorry, I got a bit high. We're talking all about what we wish we knew before we'd started at university. And don't forget, there are 3 other amazing shows happening today on TT Radio. You got a fantastic Harry at 4 to 5:30 with the drive home, and at 6 to 7:30 the even more wonderful, or even just as wonderful, Nathan on the Twilight Show. But on today's show, we are talking all about the things we wish you knew before we'd started university. The hints, the tips, all those things we've talked about. And with that, you know, on my school, my sixth form, college? No, it's not a college, it's a school, but with a sixth form. We had obviously our results day, as did the rest of the country yesterday. And as part of it, we gave out some little booklets, some little yearbook booklets type thing, and in it they had lots of kind of tips and pieces of advice about it. And I think one of the best things in there was these kind of speedy recipes, and we talked about this at the start of today's show. Is knowing how to cook is such an important skill when it came to, you know, preparing yourself or anybody for university, is actually knowing how to cook and knowing what to do. And, you know, the different meals that you could do, and also the healthy meals that you can cook, because it does become very easy. And to be fair, I think I probably got worse at this as I got older, as opposed to when I was younger. But, you know, nowadays it's very easy to go onto something like Deliveroo or Just Eat or Uber Eats or any of those kind of apps and, you know, order food this way. But not only does it become unhealthy naturally if you're doing that all the time, but also, more importantly, perhaps the financial side of it is absolutely huge, and soon very, very quickly adds up before you realise it. And you don't want to go into that overdraft, which is what I've been banging on about all of today's show is the joys of having an overdraft, or perhaps not so. So we've talked a lot already about those different things, and I think food is a really interesting one. And it's knowing how to do those food recipes. I'm really fortunate that my housemate is heading off to university very soon, and the reason I'm fortunate is because, you know, I've learned over the last year so many amazing recipes from her, and she's super fortunate in that she knows how to do them because that's kind of the skills that she learned or the skills that she picked up, you know, before she went to university. And those things really help, is knowing what to do with, you know, little ingredients or basic things, but also nutritious things. And, you know, if you know how to cook, and you know how to cook, you know, big batches of things, so you know how to do a good batch cook of, a batch cook of spaghetti bolognese, because I love spaghetti bolognese, but knowing how to do that, suddenly you've not only just got a dinner meal, but you've also got lunch, and you've got dinners maybe for, you know, next week and the week after if you put them in the freezer and all those kind of things. So suddenly this one meal or this one cooking thing has lasted you much longer. And in my first or my second place I moved to, I lived there for quite a long period of time, about 5-7 years, and someone in the house used to always do, you know, batch cooking, like huge loads of batch cooking, you know, usually on a Sunday, and it would last them like a couple of weeks. So they'd get a load of different meals, they put them in the freezer, and they would have those different meals over the course of a couple of weeks. And I think that is also a really, really great idea. And those are things that I didn't learn before I went to university, and I wish I'd gone, do you know what? If you'd done this, James, A, you probably would have eaten a little bit healthier, and B, you would have saved a lot of money. It's amazing how much money you end up spending just on, you know, a quick McDonald's here or a quick Subway here or a delivery there, whatever it might be. So, you know, again, homing on those basic life skills, you know, is so important. And I know that some schools do still essentially do life skills or do those basic things. And I don't just mean in the way of PSHE and in terms of consent and anti-bullying and, you know, really important topics like that and friendship, but actually, you know, how to do these other things, you know, budgeting, planning a meal, batch cooking, you know, what that even means and what that looks like and why it helps and all those sort of things. And I'm really in a fortunate position where, as well as being a drama teacher, I'm head of PSHE, and looking at the program that we offer and thinking, actually, what else do we need to be teaching our young people? And I think some of these things are part of that, and we go, actually, we need to embed that in what we teach and what we do, because if we really are about preparing young people for the future, which, of course, I hope all of us are in any school that we're in, but if we're really about that, it's not just about teaching them how to be kind to each other, it's also about teaching them how to look after themselves. And if they don't know how to do that, well, that opens up a whole host of other problems as well. So what are other things that you wish you had known? I'm looking through to see if we've got any more, and we've got a few coming through, so I'm just having a look at what these are. Just go onto the old Twitter. Do love a bit of Twitter, and if you're not following our Twitter, I really do urge you to make sure that you are at TT Radio 2021, because that is the place to catch all of the amazing things that are happening across all the different shows. And at the moment, our breakfast shows are running throughout the week from 9 o'clock. Normally they are much earlier, but due to the summer period, they are happening a little bit later for you, so they are 9 to 10:30. Always good to get involved in that. Normally they are about 7 to 8:30. So you can listen to me on your way to school, because I can't believe how quick it's coming around. It must be about 2 or 3 weeks' time, isn't it, or something? Which is a little bit scary, but we'll carry on. But some of the other things that we wish we'd learned, and I'm just going through what some of these are from what people put up on the chat and some of the hosts put for me earlier today. And one of the ones I want to go back to and talk a little bit more about is, choosing the right courses as opposed to university prestige. And we talked, a little bit in length about this a bit earlier on in the show. But I just had more time to think about it in between the breaks and in between the conversations that we've had so far. And it really is interesting that actually I don't know how much time we spend really going into depth about courses and challenging views. Now, I say this as somebody that did drama, and I know in drama, for example, people always say, what do you want to do? And they say, oh, I want to be an actor. And you go, okay, but, what else do you want to be? And the reason they quite often sometimes say if they want to be an actor is because they don't know what other options there are, what other things they can do. I took my A-level drama class a couple of years ago to a university that offered drama, but it also offered design and set design things. And we did a whole sort of different session around what else there was, and they did, video design for like shows and performances, when they do projections on Buckingham Palace and different places like that. So the whole course dedicated to that. We looked at set making and making the set and making the costumes and all these different things. And I remember talking to a student about this after we were making some set. We were making like a backdrop, and we were painting like brick wall. We're basically making a brick wall backdrop by paint and things like that. And it was, as someone who's not artistic in the slightest when it comes to practical drawing and things like that, I'm not arty in any way. I absolutely loved it. And I was talking to a student about it afterwards, and they were like, wait, this is a job. Like, I can do this as a job. And they just had no idea. They loved art, they were doing drama, and they were doing the set design sort of part of it as part of the course for drama A-level. But they had no idea that they could make it a job for themselves to paint set or to make costume or to do any of that. They didn't think anybody would actually get paid for that. And it's opening up people's minds, really, and opening up people's horizons beyond what they just see. So when someone says to you, okay, I want to be a lawyer, it's getting them to start thinking, okay, well, what kind of law really interests you? Because actually, that might impact the place that you want to go to. You're saying you might want to go to this university because it's the best one, and of course it might be, and this and that, and that's great. But actually, if you want to do family law, it might be better you go to this place, or this place might be more suited to you, or whatever it might be, because the course says this. Or when people say they want to be a doctor or a nurse, and you go, that's great, but what area interests you the most? And really breaking down what that course is and why they want to do that subject. Of course, you don't want to discourage them and give them 50,000 questions at the end run a mile, but you want to find out what is the course that they want, what is it they actually want to do. And also, if they don't know, so they say they want to do being a doctor or a lawyer, but they don't know exactly what area they wanted to go to. Well, you might say to them, well, let's look at courses that make sure you get a really big breadth of knowledge across the different areas, and then you get to make up your own mind at the end. Going to a drama school, in the school that I went to, if you wanted to be a lighting designer, you could do a course just for that. If you wanted to do a sound designer, you'd go and do a course just for that. If you wanted to be a production manager, you'd do a course just for that, etc., etc., etc. But actually, sometimes people didn't know what side of technical theatre they wanted to do, what side of backstage theatre you wanted to do. So you might go, well, although that's a really good university, the courses there are for, light design, set design, so they are set courses for those areas. If you don't know if that's what you want to do, why don't we look at this other university that allows you the chance to do, in your first year, 3 different types of backstage courses, and then by your final year, you get to select and home in on one area that you're really interested in. There are going to be courses that break it down. I gave the example earlier on about the young person in our school who's now going on to do basically a PE a degree around physical education, but on the side of it, it also links back to education and working with young people. So it's not a teaching qualification as such or per se, but it does have some education background as part of it as well. And that really suits her because she absolutely loves PE, and that's where her passion is, and she wants to do sport and do stuff with football and physio and things like that. Doesn't want to go into the full science side of it, so doesn't really want to do a sport therapy course or whatever in that sense. But also wants to work with young people, but doesn't want to definitely become a teacher. So you're trying to pull those different strands together and see what works best. And finding those options are so important. So I'd really encourage, anybody that's, giving advice or supporting young people in their next steps to make sure you are breaking down what it is they want to achieve and do, not just looking at, okay, we want to get the best statistics possible for our school, for our college. Let's make sure they go to these really posh and, top universities. Of course, if you can get there, that's great. If that's for you and they offer what you want, that's great. But really making sure it's what you want to achieve and it's going to satisfy what you want to do is the most important. And I wish I'd had somebody say that to me when I was younger. And I think that's the big piece of advice that I would have wanted. But what do you think? Why don't you get involved and let us know via the Podbean Live app, or of course you can via Facebook. We're live on Facebook. I've got the live feed up on my phone, or you can as well also on Twitter as well at TT Radio 2021. We're coming in though to the final few minutes of today's show. I don't know how an hour, it's already been an hour and 15. Time seems to fly. Well, I hope you'll all join me once again next Wednesday for the Wednesday Morning Breakfast Show, 9 till 10:30. But let's have some closing thoughts, shall we? Some closing thoughts about what we've looked at and discussed today regarding things we wish we knew before we started university. Hello and welcome back. Really great to have everybody here. Really great to have had so many of you over the course of the hour and a bit joining us. If you have joined us halfway through, and you are thinking, actually, I'd really love to get involved and find out more, you can, of course, become a Teachers Talk Radio host, or indeed, if you are sat there thinking, I missed the start of the show and I want to go back to listen to more, well, don't panic. You can do so via Podbean Live app, just search Teachers Talk Radio or TT Radio, or, of course, you can go onto other sites such as Spotify, where you'll find us, or the Apple alternative, which I will learn the name one day. So to summarise kind of what we've looked at today in the piece of advice that we've looked at of what we wish we'd known before we'd started university, we've had quite a few over the course of today's session, and remember, the conversation doesn't have to end there, so feel free always to make sure you go back and you have a think, and if you do have anything, you can share it with us on Twitter or my personal Twitter at JAMCLAR96, JamClark96, where we can carry that conversation on there. And feel free to message me as well if any of today's show has sparked some interest, or you're sitting there thinking, actually, I'm now thinking this. Let me know. Would love to hear it. When we are thinking, though, about things in our next step, it's been really interesting to kind of balance all of the areas of those life skills. And I'm now kind of sat here thinking, well, okay, we've talked about finance, we've talked about food, we've talked about knowing your local area, we've talked about, practicalities of things such as washing machines and dishwashers, and what even dishwasher machine salt is, I still don't know. We've talked about all of those different things. But now we start to think about, actually, how do we start to make those things as part of our everyday teaching and program? Because it's all well and good to say that we need to know this and we wish we'd known that, we wish we'd known that. But the problem is, if we just do that, we're going to be in the same situation for the next X number of years. We're going to be going round and round in circles of going, I wish we'd taught that. Oh, probably should have taught that. I don't know that. Or I've gone to university, I've made that mistake. And of course, life is about making mistakes and learning from those. And that's how we learn best, in my mind. But actually, we should be learning from those mistakes now and thinking, how can we counterbalance them and how can we ensure that they aren't continuously happening all over again and the same ones coming up? So I challenge you to start going back to your planning if you are listening to this as a teacher and thinking, where can I embed these life skills that we've talked about today? Where can we embed how to explore the settings of a dishwasher, flash washing machine, in our curriculum and in our planning? And it might always not be the things that come naturally. You know, we can look at things such as planning a meal, and I look at things such as maths, and I think actually you can embed that. You can have a bunch of ingredients as a starter task and go, look, you know, you've got 10 tomatoes, X amount of this is the recipe card, and you know, with the ingredients that we've got, how many servings of ratatouille can we make, you know, and getting them to look at the recipe card and then look at what ingredients they've got in their basket and go, actually, okay, or, you know, do it the other way around. This is a recipe card that serves for spaghetti bolognese. You are planning a meal, you're doing meal prep for the next 2 weeks, Monday to Friday dinners. You know, how much ingredients would you need to satisfy those meals? So you can kind of look at and go, okay, well, there's 10 meals. This recipe card says 4 or 5, whatever you want to do. We need to double it, or we need to do 2 and 2.5, or whatever it might be. You know, start breaking it down in that sense and really embedding that knowledge in. And you're doing it in a way that actually you're both covering the curriculum, you're covering what you want to teach them, but most importantly, you're teaching them those life skills or things that we go, I wish I'd known this when I was at school, or wherever it might be. And I do think, you know, there's no harm in doing, you know, lessons or days in those basic life skills. Thinking about, you know, how do you change a bike tyre? How do you change a car tyre? How do you open up a bank account? How do you, you know, sew a button? How do you iron? You know, all of these things, you know, how do you put together an IKEA bit of furniture? They are skills for life, I'm telling you now. You can put together IKEA furniture, you don't need to do anything else in your life. You're sorted, you're going to have a house, it's going to be built. But, you know, where are we offering those opportunities in our education for those skills to be learned? Because I would always say it's my concern and my worry that we look at things and I think, are we just being an exam factory? Are we just expecting people to come in, learn what they need to learn how to read a textbook, answer the questions, go home again, and that's it? You know, is that a vicious cycle that we simply become? And that is the question or the thought of the day that I leave you all with as we come towards the end of today's breakfast show. It's been an absolute pleasure, as always, to be here on the show with you. And I do remind you that, of course, there are lots of other shows happening today. So just to remind you once again of the other shows that appeared today, should you wish to join them, which, of course, I'd highly recommend. You've got the wonderful Harry at 4 to 5:30 for the Drive Home show today. You've got the fabulous Nathan at 6 to 7:30 for the Twilight show as well, and they've got some amazing topics, I know, as well. So make sure you are joining in for those as well. At Lesson Copy, the Twilight show, they're looking at they're talking about pupil referral units and alternative provisions as well. So no doubt that will be a fantastic show to join in as well. And Harry, I'm just looking at what Harry is talking about today. It's talking about education of some form. I can't see it on the Twitter at the moment. There we go. Is talking about different forms of education as well. So do make sure a very happy hump day afternoon is what they said, what Harry said there. So make sure you join in for that as well. Of course, you can remember you can listen back to this show and all the other shows via the Podbean Live app, or of course on Spotify or Apple alternatives as well. So do make sure you do that. Finally, if you do want to be part of a host, you can absolutely do that. Find out more information on the Twitter at TTRadio2021 or on our website, ttradio.org, where you'll find all the information there you need. For me, though, it's been absolutely fantastic to have you all here, and I will hopefully see you all once again next Wednesday at the earlier time still of 9, all the way through till 10:30, where we'll have a brand new discussion point for you, brand new question, and I might even have a guest for you. Who knows? From me, though, thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your Wednesday. For those of you who are still on holiday, I hope you are having a wonderful time wherever you are, relaxing, taking time off, enjoying the sunshine that's arrived, because that's the best part about summer at the moment, isn't it? The sun. So thank you very much for all that. Wishing you all the best with it. Do start thinking as well about what those facts are. Start thinking about what you would do. You know, what are the things you wish you'd learned, and how are you going to embed it into your school curriculum, education, background, etc., etc. All the best. Stay safe. This has been James Clark on your Wednesday morning breakfast show. Thank you.
You've been listening to Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live and listen back at ttradio.org. We look forward to hearing from you next time on Teachers Talk Radio.